And it's like, why?
And I think this is a part, you know?
That really cracked my Google rating. Way up.
That's these are just like a glorified yellow pages.
Right.
So basically,
They don't even update it.
Right here.
It's one of those things.
Hello? Were you in the room?
I tried to go learn something. I tried to go to the web accessibility, and they were just talking about why you want to do it. And it's like, don't tell me why I might want to do it. Just tell me how to do it. Because in the description it talked about specifics.
Wow, because you're up against some very good contenders, aren't you? Yes, who's on it?
Under personal?
Yeah, there's Greek the word.
Buzzwords. And there's
Oh, 10 days in my life.
Fortunately, you weren't in that way because you know, like when I see sites that like I didn't.
I see.
In the sense that like if there are sites that are already judging them, that's biased, right?
Sure.
So, but I was happy. I said, oh wow, she's a finalist. Great, that's so good.
Security's really scared.
What is that now exactly? What's the picture?
The picture. This is my my project Saved by the Bells. That's gonna be at the. It's a finalist at South by Southwest.
Blue Sponge.
Blue Sponge is my company.
Oh, okay.
The company I work for.
And that device, is it a storage device or what?
Yeah, it's storage animation. You can exchange animations. You can download animations.
It's got a beaming.
So you can create your own animation and.
Wow.
Digicharm.
Here, I'll give you the card of the guy who manufactures the screen, which is not
Digicharm.com, huh?
Yeah. That's the company.
Thank you.
It looks like it's not going to overtake the odds.
Michael Palmer. You must be Michael Palmer.
No, I'm not Michael Palmer.
No, you're...
Michael Palmer's in Montreal.
Okay.
So where are we going tonight?
The opening party is at Frog Design at 8 o'clock. Frog Design, which is at 8th and Congress.
I don't know.
So why do you have the help to know?
And then a bunch of. I'm going to book podcast.
I said, yeah, they closed early. Wasn't that great?
8th and
Congress. It's a big
far from here?
No. Not at all. Walking, you turn left out of the convention center. You're on 4th right now, and you go 4 blocks and you're in Congress, and then you turn right.
8th and Congress. And from there,
there's another thing called Book Punk,
I just like the atmosphere.
which is on the east side of town.
Yeah.
Seen. I think if anything, it's indicative of the fact that this year South by Southwest has really kind of outgrown its clothes a little bit, and we're really kind of it being bigger and bigger. And give yourself a round of applause for helping us do that. Seriously. I won't waste any time, any more time of your precious time. Thank you so much for coming down. I'm Matt down there with South by Southwest. I'm the festival producer. I just want to say thank you for putting up with Bush's rain, and know that we are thank you, and we are so honored to have everybody here. We're so honored to have this be the world premiere. It's a perfect place, the Paramount Theater, Austin, Texas, South by Southwest, and we're all yeah. Just a quick heads up, those of you who attend the conference panels, there will be a case study session on this film tomorrow afternoon, so be sure to check that out in your program book or at the convention center. Thank you so much, and please, if you can, give a warm Texas apolitical welcome to Michael Shube, Joseph Mealy, and Elizabeth Reeder.
I'm the co-producer of Bush's Brain. This is Michael Shube and Joseph Mealy. and we are thrilled to be here for the world premiere of Bush's Brain. We'd like to thank you all for standing in the rain and taking your time to come see the film. We'd like to remind you to turn off your cell phones and no flash photography during the film. But we're going to have a Q&A session with not only the three of us, but also, and I'd like to point them out, Jim Moore and Wayne Slater, who are the authors of the book, Bush's Brain. There they are. They're going to be sticking around and doing some Q&A after the film, and I don't want to hold this up any further, so please enjoy the film and welcome.
Let me introduce the people involved in the film. I'm Michael Shube. This is my co-director, Joe Mealy. Co-producer, Elizabeth Reeder. The editor, Tom Cedar. I'd like to bring up the authors of the book, Jim Moore and Wayne Slater. The music was done at the music festival. Also, the music was done by David Friedman. David, come up. So we'll be happy to answer any questions, any thoughts you might have. Well, this was our broadcast so far. None yet.
Do you have insurance?
Yes, we do. The question was, do you have insurance? The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
Do you have Kevlar?
Well, we didn't. Wait, the question was about Florida, the Florida election in 2000 in the Florida.
Yeah, and we didn't cover that. We actually didn't have the resources to go down, and Michael Moore is making a film that features that right now, so we didn't want to duplicate that.
Has Karl Rove seen the film?
Probably.
He's taken every name in the audience.
He actually read the book before it was out, so it probably...
Yes, at the beginning, the notation is, I saw your book manuscript, which was floating around Washington. It wasn't floating around Washington.
I have a question for Wayne.
Up here.
Bob, I saw you in Jersey, George, and I know that you're not always a big fan of George, but how do you think that you've personally been able to sidestep attacks from Rove?
Well, after tonight, I don't know. This is, I mean, a lot of people have read the book, but there's a power to a documentary. So when he sees this, and I don't know if he's actually seen it yet, but he will, he won't be too happy. No, you know, he's, I shouldn't say this, but I will. I've never been audited before until, I'm serious, until this last year when the book came out. So I think it's just the beginning.
Why did McCain support Bush? Why did McCain support Bush? Is that the question? I think he's an honorable soldier, and that's his party. And I think that you'll see the same thing on the Democratic side. It's just a question of going with your party's nominee. But I think John McCain still has a number of big issues with George W. Bush, and in particular Karl Rove. And it's very milquetoast kind of support. John McCain is not an enthusiastic supporter of George W. Bush at all. And if I can say anything, whatever we do, let's not let this happen again. I also want to say one thing. There would not be a Bush's Brain, the book, or a Bush's Brain, the movie, or my new book, which, by the way, is called Bush's War for Re-Election, without a very bright, capable young editor at John Wiley & Sons named David Pugh, and I'd like him to stand up and be recognized. There he is.
The question is, if Bush loses, what will Karl Rove do next?
Well, he's worth $1 million, and there are two things he's going to do. And one is that when Bush is no longer president, and that'll happen either this year or 4 years from now, then Karl will hang up a shingle, and he will be a kingmaker. He'll basically be
So let me talk a little bit about what groups are. First, a group we're defining loosely as a number of people that are in persistent communication with each other. By persistent, I mean that means that they do it a couple times, maybe, or they do it for a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's persistent for years, but it's different from something where, like a TV broadcast. Those are certainly group forming networks, or groups forming within a network. eBay auctions is a really interesting example of something that you might not think is a group, but it's a group that came around together on a common interest. I want to buy and sell this thing, and I need to get it done. So why is group forming interesting? There's a guy named David Reed, a real smart internet scientist, one of the people that helped invent the internet for real. And he said, you know, what the really interesting thing about the internet is that it allows people to organize themselves into groups. And other people ended up naming that Reed's Law, and he wrote down a formula for the value of that network, the ability to create groups over a network. You might know Metcalfe's law. Bob Metcalfe was one of the key guys that started Ethernet, and he's got a law named after him, Metcalfe's law, that the value of a network is n squared, the number of connections that you can make across the network. David said, you know, when you're able to not just pair machines, pair connections, but you can actually set up groups of connections, then you end up with a power law that's different. It's not n squared, it's 2 to the n. And that's actually a much faster growth curve. So even if there isn't a lot of value in any particular group, there are so many more possible groups that you can come to in a group forming network that there's an exceptional amount of value there. And so he saw this major change from, now we've got connectivity, we've got Metcalfe's law that says that we can make connections everywhere. On top of that, once we start organizing groups in all kinds of different ways, you end up with this is an explosion of option value. And the couple links here I think are really useful, especially David Weinberger's interview, where David kind of does a great job. David Weinberger does a great job of making that simple. So that's kind of a rough overview. I thought maybe we could turn it over to somebody else and give some examples, some more concrete examples of what's going on. Who wants to go first? How about you, Sam?
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Put it on me. A very simple example of a group forming is something that many of you may have actually see a lot. ARC channels that are out here, South by Southwest,
where some people may be heckling or be recording, get Betsy's case, the conversations that are going on. It's that easy to create a group. I am probably best known in here by the weblog I create. If you happen to know me at all, you probably do know my weblog. I came in here and I met a number of people that I only knew through their weblogs, and we knew about each other that way, and that created a shared context, which made it easier for us to create groups. I posted here about Dave Shea coming up and meeting me, and how we didn't know each other by name, but we actually did know his work. And I posted it here, and immediately thereafter, he posted on my weblog. So comments are a great way to cause groups to happen. And not just comments, you can scroll down a little more, and another person contributed in. This was about the power outlet debacle that has been resolved. Then excerpts. What I've got on my weblog software is things that will go out and see via the referral logs that, hey, something in Phil Renato actually referenced my thing. And so I actually went out and pulled text from his weblog over to mine. Pulled the content of his stuff over onto my weblog, and so we actually create the connectivity that way. Trackback is the same basic thing, more actively though. The piece of software there goes out and actually pushes the data towards you. Another excerpt, etc. That was on a trivial matter, and I don't think this will have any rather long-lasting effects. It won't necessarily create a new group, but it actually shows how easy it is to create the links. The next page, the next thing I did was actually, I had a presentation yesterday on a panel, Wiki What, and I talked about some of the issues that came out there from the wiki. And immediately thereafter, authors of other wikis that were not part of the presentation said, yes, I understand, we've got similar problems. And we were actually talking about possibly creating a new standard, a wiki markup standard, a wiki interchange format. Again, it's posted and trackbacks, etc. This one's actually got more of a chance of actually becoming a long-lasting group. But it's that easy to cause those types of actions to happen because of the way people follow links. They actually, whether it's RSS feeds or they just basically see refers, trackbacks, etc., this can get people together who didn't know about each other. I often find these links. I mean, the excerpts I said I do refer alongs. Another way I do it is automatically by going into Technorati, which can see who links me. So one of the key ways in which weblogs are changing things is it's not necessarily just a publish only. You get up and publish and broadcast, but by being able to traverse the link backwards, let's see who links to you, you can actually find interesting connections.
So let me kind of ask you about that real quick, Sam. So what you've got is blogs that where we're used to people pouring out their soul and talking about themselves, but so now we're actually getting to the point where the weblogs are talking to each other. Is that right?
The feedbacks, trackbacks are, yes.
And does a weblog author have to do anything special to let you know that he's talking about you, or?
It depends on the software. I actually go out of my way actively to pull the stuff and don't have to do anything.
Okay.
Yeah, all they have to do is have a link, and if either Technorati sees that, or at least one person clicks on that link, then I will see it from my referral log, or I'll see it by automatically pulling Technorati. And both are rather good sources of actually finding out if the link does exist.
So it's so ridiculously easy that the author doesn't even do anything.
Correct.
You do a little bit of work to kind of keep the thing together.
Yes.
You want to just make a comment that ties into that? Because again, I'm conflicted now, but I do work with Technorati. But I have it set up so that every time I get a link from somebody, I get a message on my cell phone that tells me that somebody's linked to me, and it's about it's approximately 7 or 8 minutes is about the cycle time to get a link to here, and I've got IRC and Instant Messenger on here, and one of the things that's really important about the difference between a weblog is that the speed has increased to almost the same speed or exceeding the response time of email. So one of the really important things that you think about now is that Usenet was, you used to get people who would write a lot, but generally it was kind of a couple messages a day. But now what's happened is that you're getting the speed of Instant Messenger on weblogs. And so if somebody links to you, you'll find people linking back to you within minutes. And what's interesting is that then you add the mobile phone to it, and you add these chat rooms to it, and what happens is that suddenly this community that you have is online and active. So you have your buddy list, so all these will converge. Your SMS, your buddy list, the themes from your weblogs, and IRC will all become one sort of big blob of stuff. And in the cell phone ethnographies, I mean, there's a term that a Japanese researcher has been using. It's called the full-time intimate community, which is in general averages about 4 or 5 people, which coincidentally coincides with the fact that most of the weblogs have only 4 or 5 links. And so there's a small group of 4 or 5 people that you generally know what they're doing. It's like, and it's a state, so you know whether they're awake, where they are, they're generally available. But there's a sort of a group of people that you're always in touch with, and it's more about presence and less about content. And so this is kind of a tangent, but I think it's interesting to see that the acceleration of speed and makes these communities real time, which adds to the strength of the bonds.
And is that going to be more pervasive now that it's gone mobile like that? Or to put it another way, to my American eyes, or that sounds like a dream still. Is it? It sounds hard. It sounds like you've got all this stuff flying over the place.
I think America is the only place it's not happening, and I think that a lot of it has to do with, and Howard talks about this a lot, but I think Americans always think about cyberspace and real world, real life as 2 different places. But in countries where you have mobility, the network is part of the real life, and so you're always texting and in touch, and your attention, the network attention, fades in and out of your real life. So if something important is happening, so when I get my Technorati ping, I glance at it to see how many inbounds that blogger has, to see how much reputation it has, or if it's somebody that I know. If it's important, even during a conversation, I'll look at it, right? But it's very different than popping open your computer, turning it on, booting it, and diving into cyberspace. So all these connections with the mobility, and especially with location, it integrates into the real life. And that's a big different experience than sort of diving into cyberspace 2 hours a day or 5 hours a day.
So you've got this intimate thing going on. Do you see group forming going on too?
Yeah, so it's a different kind of group forming. My assertion would be that most of the stuff that you see on this chat channel, the content is just the carrier signal for people transmitting presence to each other. If you look at it, it's good morning, I need a bath, I'm hungry, and the content of most SMS is just a carrier for people letting each other know what state they're in. And so one of the most important value propositions of this community is to be able to understand the state and the presence of the people around you. And again, this is a very different layer than the deliberative sort of blogs and media discussion that we often have. But a lot of the really simple group forming, and this is I think an important point, is that a lot of people collaborate for the sake of collaborating, not because there's a point, just because they're together. And I think that a lot of the tools, you forget, you sort of focus on the content, but really what the point is that you're in touch with a bunch of people and it feels good.
Sounds good. Sam, did you have more to? I didn't mean to cut you off.
That was a good break point.
Adam, you want to go next? Or?
Sure. I think I have a little bit different perspective. I have more of a kind of business and marketing background. And one of the things that I'd like to focus on in terms of the panel topic is the first part, which is the ridiculously easy part. And I think that in terms of, can everyone hear me okay, by the way? In terms of making things ridiculously easy, it's not just contained within the software and the platforms themselves. I think a lot of that extends out even into the messaging and the marketing. For example, if you're operating a weblog platform, you call it a weblog platform. Part of the challenge with bringing in novices who really, really need for things to be super easy is explaining to them what a blog is, because maybe they haven't heard of it before. When AOL announced their AOL Journals product, they did that because there was a conceptual barrier to the term blog, so they called it a journal because they knew that everyone knew what that was. So I think that you can take steps out of the user experience on the software side, but you also have to take steps out and simplify things on the communication side of things and really making people aware of these technologies. That's that point.
Did you want to show Easy Journal real quick?
Sure. And just in terms of making things simple, on Easy Journal we have things kind of contained a little bit separately. We're going to be opening up to the blogosphere a lot more over the next few months. But right now, everything is pretty much self-contained within the Easy Journal network. As I said, we have about 90,000 registered users. One of the features that people like a lot is the ability to form what we call journal networks, which is basically kind of like blog rolling. So I'm going to show you an example real quick. One of the choices that I have here is to edit my journal network. And I'm going to add someone to it. I don't know if she's here, on Assistant. I temporarily took her off of my journal network, but I'm going to add her back in just so you can see how easy it is. Her username is Mama Wire. And she's in. So she's now part of the group, and when I think of making things ridiculously easy, these are the kind of models that I really look towards. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. So you just added her as a group, but you're kind of the admin, aren't you?
Yes.
Are the other users able to add people to the group? Is it that open?
Yes. Well, not to my group. This is my particular group that appears on my weblog. So if you go right here to my weblog, which is adamnation.org, and if I refresh this, I'm not getting a very good wireless signal right now. Anyways, you see Mama Wire's on there now. And so this is specific to my weblog. She would not be able to add herself to that. She could add me to hers. And then we have another thing on here called a network digest, which is essentially just a quick read of everyone who is in my network, and I'm also in their network. So there has to be a mutual agreement there. And it's done. This part is done automatically, so we don't have to invite each other onto this page. You know, all the data is there, and then the page just figures it out.
So I wonder, did you have one of the questions that we talked about was what businesses will value out of group forming. I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. I think that especially with weblogging and a lot of the social software technologies that we're seeing, you know, one of the biggest, most compelling factors are the network effects. You mentioned Metcalfe's law, and it's actually not n squared, it's n times n minus 1. But
it reads a lot similar.
Right. It comes out to be roughly the same. But what that basically says is that the value of the network is proportional to the number of members. And so that's why you have an ISP like AOL that's so powerful, because they have all of their members that are very tightly interconnected with other people. So there's some barriers to exit. There's switching costs there. If you leave AOL, then you're going to be leaving a lot of your friends and family behind, maybe. And so in terms of placing a value, I think it can be useful for generating revenue directly, but I think it's even better for other critical business drivers, things like retention, things like user activity that you know, kind of roll up into revenue and into sustainable revenue models.
Cool. From another business perspective, and my boss has actually asked me quite frequently, what's the business value of this? And my response usually is along the lines of what's the business value of this messaging? You don't necessarily, you can perhaps make a business off your tools and whatever, but by and large, the real value is the connections. The real value is during a teleconference, you're actually multitasking and talking to somebody else while you're on the phone. I can do research just by simply putting something on my weblog, point a few people, and they will point back, and they will contribute back. So it's the ability to gather research and to connect to people is the great value. To me, more so than the tools themselves.
How does that get to the bottom line? What did your manager say after that?
There's no cohesive answer to that. Basically, they see it as being important. They do see it as something that needs further investigation research. But it's
So do they value having people know more or be able to do the job better, faster?
yes. I mean, I'm talking with an idea and at conferences like this about technology. It is something that we're investing in since the beginning.
Cool. Okay.
Let's see. Excuse me. My voice has been recovering for a few days now. This is about as good as it's going to get. Go ahead. Switch. I don't have much to add in terms of a business model perspective, because I'm going to talk a little bit about something that a few of us did purely for fun. And we're trying to, it's kind of an experiment, it's kind of fun. But I want to take a step back first. We've talked a lot about group forming. I want to talk a little about the first part of that, which is ridiculously easy. And why does easy matter? I think this panel is titled Ridiculously Easy Group Forming for a reason. And I just want to go over a couple of reasons. Easy means, like I said, more people can do it. When you make something easy to use, like a tool, or more usable, it's more accessible, more people can do it. This has fundamentally good effects. It's more democratic. Easy means that you make things simple. The simpler that you make things, the quicker that people write tools for them. And in fact, the more tools get written for them, even faster. The bottom line is easy is for the rest of us. And that's a slogan that Apple really sort of pioneered, right? The machine, the rest of us. And it's not just about machines, it's about anything. Technology, protocols, formats, whatever. You do something that's simpler, it gets adopted quicker. And this is, anyone that's worked with any standards bodies knows this by heart. The more complex the standard, the longer it takes to get the tools. In fact, some of them we're still waiting. So how do you do easy? You keep things simple. You start ridiculously simple. And you start to the point where like, okay, is this going to be so simple it's going to be useless? That's probably a good place to start. Because oftentimes you find out that if you build too much from the beginning, it never gets done, or it's too complicated, or whatever. Focus on solving one problem. And this is sort of the famous quote, small pieces loosely joined. We've got the web now. We don't have to have every one person try to go out and solve everybody's problem. Just pick a piece of the problem you want to solve, and solve that piece, and post it, and distribute it. And if it works together with other pieces, then guess what? The people likely will adopt it. Whereas if you try to do it all yourself, and try to like get people into this one little site that does everything for you, then it's not something that necessarily will work with other tools. So getting back to the group forming, a lot of people have observed that blogs and blog roles are sort of naturally forming groups already. Blogs are the fastest growing part of the web. A lot of you may have gone to the Break Bread with Brad dinner the first night and gotten one of these, hello, my URL is name tags. This is not new. This has been going on for several years now. And there's a big segment of this community that understands that, you know what, well, my URL is my identity. And we're linking to each other as our URLs. So one of the logical next steps to this, if people are already linking to each other, is to add just a little bit of relationship information. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about. So at the beginning, Pete kind of joked about how ridiculously easy group forming. Hey, we're here, right? So we just formed a group. Now that's not as silly as it sounds, because the group of folks that worked on this thing called XFN actually formed at South by Southwest last year at a session. And it was a group forming literally that happened because of a session. So what is XFN? XHTML Friends Network, the idea is this simple. Everyone that blogs understands and knows about hyperlinks, linking to people with URLs. It's simply a way to say, all right, I'm going to add a little bit of information here that says, you know what, this person's my friend, or whatever. And the good thing is this is valid XHTML, because XHTML allows, and HTML for that matter, anyone to extend the rel attribute. So like I said, this group formed at South by Southwest 2003, really. And one of the key pieces of inspiration of this was, during one of the panels, Q&A, John Alcyon Stin asked, I want someone to know if someone has actually met someone else online. So when I'm linking someone, how can I find that out? And we're like, you know what? That's a really good problem to solve. So that inspired the XFN Met value. So this is somewhat similar to, you talk about Reed's law, to the n power different possibilities. Well, relationships are kind of like that too. You have lots of different axes. You may have met someone, you may be friends or acquaintances with them, you may be co-workers, or you may have familial relationships, or romantic relationships. And these aren't all independent. Like you can't just say, oh, which one of these 20 things is your relationship? There is no list of 20 things. But there is a combination of things you can sort of put together to say that's my relationship. And that's basically what XFN is. So the story is, the story is that we released the first version 3 months ago exactly. Just 3 of us that met at South by Southwest last year, previewed by a few more folks, and just threw it all out there, Creative Commons style. You know, as Corey would say, if you want your stuff backed up, you know, just put it out there, Creative Commons, and someone will back it up. The point is, it's easy. It's easy to type by hand. It's got a very simple set of values. And in fact, I'll just bring this up really quick for you, so you can take a quick look. And I'll talk about the different axes. The friendship, the physical, professional, geographical, family, and romantic. And the idea is you see the values, they're easy to type. You view other people's blogs that are using these values, and you say, oh, I can view the source, and I can just copy and paste it, I understand it. That's another good aspect of something that's easy. Can you learn from others that are using it? And to start this off, Matthew Mullenweg actually wrote an open source XFN Creator UI, which lets you, instead of having to type the source, you can basically click on radio buttons and checkboxes, and it does it all for you. So what's happened in 3 months? There's already hundreds of users using this. There's thousands of nodes in this sort of grounds-up, bottom-up, social network. Numerous tools have added support for this technology. This is part of what I was talking about, how you make something simple, ridiculously simple, and you'll get the tools really quickly. There are blogging tools that do this. There are blog rolling tools that do this as well. For example, BLO.gs now has support for XFN. You can see this will even load. There we go. And if you go to their site, it's they talk about it on their news sites, like the latest new feature that they added. The interesting thing is, if you go to, it was suggested by one person, and it was so trivially easy to do because, take a look at the screenshot of their interface down here, and that looks oddly familiar to the XFN creator. So that's another aspect. You make something simple, you code a few simple examples, release it out there as open source, and you know what? People will adopt it. So the next steps. We started ridiculously simple, almost too simple for a bunch of folks. So there's been a lot of feedback, a lot of suggestions. We're adding a few new values. If you're interested, go ahead and join the community feedback loop. Try it out, send feedback, post about it, and this whole presentation, all these links are all online. In fact, I'm actually doing a search on the web right now. I'm going to present this to you right now. And I think that's about it.
Let me ask you a couple questions. So if I get it, not only can I link to somebody, but I can say why I'm linking to them, basically?
You can say...
or what they mean to me?
Right. So say, like, in your blog roll, you have a list of people that you read, or a list of your friends, because you're reading what your friends are writing about, and you want to make that distinction. You can now easily do that. And in fact, with CSS2 attribute selectors, you can make your blog roll look different depending on your relationship with people in your blog roll.
And I've been hearing about Folk for a couple of years. Folk was going to do this for us, wasn't it?
It was, in some ways. Folk was more trying to document just the fact that you're linking to someone, like knows versus not. And then it was documenting like, what are your hobbies and interests and things like that. It was more about the person rather than the relationships, whereas XFN focuses purely on the relationships. So we've looked at possibly creating like some XFN RDF schema so that you can add XFN to Folk, and that would be a logical next step for people that are using it.
So,
but the beauty is XFN right out of the box. Anyone that knows HTML or XHTML can just drop it in. It works with the stuff that you already understand and know. You don't have to learn any new languages or tools.
Yeah,
so I want to ask a quick question. How many people here are actually already using XFN?
I want to ask a question. How many people would be intimidated by typing rel equals net into a HTML link?
It's not intimidation.
Intimidated socially, not
how many
intimidated
people think that's ridiculously easy, I guess?
I would be intimidated by that, by doing it, but I wouldn't be intimidated by incorporating it into the Easy Journal platform, because I think that could be a really big benefit for kind of describing what those relationships are within the journal networks that we
and to be fair, I mean, a lot of this stuff is nothing new. This is just taking a bunch of ideas a lot of people had and sort of putting into one place. For a long time, noticed on blog rolls, people put little asterisks next to the people they've met, right? Well, bloggers already are demonstrating they want to do this. So this is just another way of doing what they already want to do. It's a natural outgrowth of current behaviors.
First, there's like the political issues. It's like inviting someone to a wedding, right? Like maybe you don't want somebody to know that you think of them just as an acquaintance, or they think of it as a friend.
Right, the asymmetry problem.
Repeat the question.
So the question was, it's kind of like the problem of inviting people to a wedding, and you don't necessarily want to state explicitly that, hey, this person is my acquaintance, when they might think that you're their friend. And that's, you know what, you're right. And that's actually, that's the reality of like actual human relationships. And as we blog and as we put more of our lives online, there's more and more of these sort of socially awkward things we're going to have to encounter and understand how to deal with and incorporate with the technologies. With XFN, we're admitting, hey, you know what? It's not just about Orchid, are you my friend, yes or no, right? It's about reflecting the fact that relationships are asymmetrical. And maybe you'd like to know, hey, I consider this person a friend. They don't consider me an acquaintance? Okay, that's good to know. Or maybe you look at it as a compliment that you say, okay, I'll put down this person as an acquaintance, and they put me down as a friend. Oh, wow, I'd like to be their friend, so I'll change that. So it can go either way. It totally depends on your perception.
Follow-up question that's actually related to what you just said.
Okay.
Which is the changing part. The nature of relationships is very dynamic.
Absolutely.
It changes a lot. And the way it's structured right now doesn't seem very cohesive.
So there's a couple of different aspects to that. One is that you really need to, if you want to sort of like deal with the update problem, right? Your relationship changes, you've met a whole bunch of people at South by Southwest, and now you have to go update every link to them to say that you've met them. Well, that's not completely true. Most people have their blog roll in one place, either one file or one service or whatever. If you just update your blog roll in one place, and that solves that aspect of it. There's that. On the other hand, maybe you want to reflect the fact that your relationship has changed. Maybe you've been reading someone for a while, maybe you've been emailing with someone for a while, so you really consider them a friend, even though you've never met in real life. So you've been linking them with rel equals friend for a while in your blog posts. Well, after South by Southwest, maybe you met them, and you put up a new blog post saying rel equals met friend. Now, all of a sudden, you've got the temporal axis of a blog that captures time-based information. You've got XFN that captures your relationship information. You mix the two, and you can actually keep track of change your relationships over time.
It kind of begs the question, is there an enemy subtype for that?
That's a great question. So I'm actually really glad you asked that, because that goes to a little bit about some of the design principles that we had behind XFN, which is that we decided that to deliberately social engineer it to leave out all negative relationships. And the reason behind that, let's see, here we go. Did everyone read that, or should I grow this? How about that? Bigger? That's my browser, I should be able to do that, right? So there's no denying that negative relationships do exist, but the question you have to ask is that actually a fun thing to do, to document negative relationships on your blogs and on the web? We didn't think so, so we deliberately social engineered it so that there was no negative relationship types. Now, of course, you can, it's one of those things where if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So you could say, oh, I just met this person. That might mean you don't know them at all, really, you just met them. Or it might mean you met them and you don't like them at all. We leave that deliberately ambiguous. Now, but that of course begs the next question, which is, couldn't someone else also add their own, make their own, XHTML enemies network or something with their own set of values? They absolutely could. So in some ways we sort of opened a Pandora's box here, and that here's a good example, somebody could come out with a bad example. Well, I guess part of that comes down to the fact of, do you have more faith in people on the web doing good things or doing bad things? We think the good will win out. And we think examples like wikis and other places on the web that are like nice and open, where the good has been winning out, demonstrate that that's true.
There's a research by a Japanese professor named Professor Yamagishi. He does 3 different types of markets. It's game theory: positive reputation tracking, negative reputation tracking, and where you can change accounts. And the negative reputation, the quality is high at the beginning because everybody's afraid, but and they soon realize that they can dump their IDs as they get bad reputation, so the quality goes down. Whereas good reputation starts fairly low because no one has any reputation, but as the reputation builds up, it increases, and the completely closed market where you can't run away versus a positive reputation where you can run away become nearly equal after a certain period of time. And so basically the notion is that positive reputation traffic is as good as a closed system long term. So there's some data behind that. You didn't even know that. It's like raising kids too. Like, you know, negative feedback works at the beginning, but sort of deteriorates in value, whereas positive reinforcement is better long term.
I wonder if there are other social, maybe I can ask the panel, other bad social effects, spamming, maybe people that want to say that I want to be in your group but you don't want them in your group, or how do we make sure that we don't end up with a digital divide so that there, you know, a bunch of people are group forming and a bunch of people aren't group forming?
Spamming's been a little bit of a problem. It's starting to be a growing problem in comments, and it's occasionally a problem with wikis. Wikis are self-healing though. With enough eyes and just simple one-click away from the learning. It's often harder to create spam than it is to remove it. So it's not a long-term problem that I've seen, at least from wikis. Comment spamming has become more and more of an issue because the comment spammers are becoming more and more smart. They put in things that look relevant, and they point to sites that on the facade are web links. But underneath, if you need a source, you find that inside of that thing you pointed to are links to sites that you would not want to be linking to. So, I've answered the question, or I missed everybody by talking in the mic.
Any other negative social things that we can foresee or prevent, or?
I think that you know, the other danger area, not just in terms of the content, but in terms of the ID. So people being able to actually, you know, create these registered user accounts. And you've seen, you know, web mail providers really try and just relentlessly block this stuff out, whatever means necessary. Yahoo, Hotmail, you know, the CAPTCHA images that are now required, and you know, even causing problems for some people, like if you're blind and you can't see the CAPTCHA image. So it's becoming more complex, but I think that eventually, when Sam and I were talking before, he mentioned the idea of self-policing, and by making groups so easy that, you know, intelligent people can join and be there all the time, or at least some people can be there some of the time, then you kind of have this round-the-clock human monitoring system that's at play. I think that can help a whole lot.
How about social customs or social norms around friends and acquaintance relationships? How is that going to? How long is that going to take to get to the point where it's not uncomfortable anymore? Well, everybody's kind of got everybody knows the social conventions of being in a room together, for instance. We don't really understand how to do that on the web yet, and different people take that up in different ways. And
well, I have an opinion.
Go for it.
Which is that, in a way, so I'd like to see how well XFN works, because in my chat channel, we have cliches that are evolving continuously. We have a bot that anybody can write functions to, and it's much more subtle than any of these social network tools, because we have certain words and certain timing and the way that things happen that have a lot of cues that we normally associate with real life that we've developed just sort of organically, and they're not codified, and they change. And that's why I think that the interactions that I see on IRC are much more normal than the interactions I see on Orkut or on other types of codified behavior systems. And I would assert that each IRC channel and even each time zone has a different modality, because in our IRC channel we have the European time zone, and then the Europeans get drunk, and then these other guys wake up, and then we've got the South Africans coming in. Each one has a different set of social sort of styles. And so, and each group is different, right? And so I kind of think that some of these, again, very simple things that leave a lot more flexibility in terms of, you know, the way people use it are more rich than the codified stuff. Now, they're less scalable, but maybe
that matches an experience I've had. I'm a member of a mailing list that's about 15 years old. It's on a particular topic, the English language, and we never talk about the English language. It's just a bunch of people that like to hang out together. And one of the things I've noticed, I've been there about 7 years, that there's a definite sense of place there. It's a place where everyone knows your name and like that. But its membership is kind of continuously evolving and things like that. And what I've found happens is new people start to learn the customs of the folks that have been around there longer, and you tell stories about tales and legends of, you know, the giant, when giants walk the list and things like that. And the list kind of tells itself, it seems like there's an organism that's separate from all the people that is the collection of all the stories that have been told and retold about the list. And it's something that, even though the people changed, the list continually retells itself what's going on and who it is and what it is. So it reminds me very much of that Joito channel and the way that kind of evolves.
Lists themselves, as you said, have personalities. The Atom Standard that I'm working on, we do the stuff partially on weblogs, partially on Wiki, partially on mailing lists. Each one has a different personality. It's literally the place itself has a different personality. The mailing list tends to be dominated by people that are not shy, like to talk. You almost think of it as the typical alpha male. That's where you find the alpha males come out and run. It's mailing lists. There are many people, and that's not totally a gender comment, although it is almost exclusively male. There may be people who want to contribute but feel more comfortable doing it in the safety and security of their own weblog. The wiki intimidates some and enables others. It just is a different feeling, a different personality. Each one brings out a different group. I don't know if the combination of three brings out everybody necessarily, but it gives more people an opportunity to participate.
In terms of the social norms, I mean, I don't even think we're near there yet, even with email.
Yes, I completely agree with that, yeah.
My own use of email has changed over the last however many years. You know, I think even just a few years ago, probably not many of us, I know I didn't use IM for work, but now I use it all the time for work. And so I think we're just at the beginning of even starting to see some patterns that we can actually make some generalizations about. I agree with what Joy said, and especially with what Sam said about specific groups having their own personalities. I mean, that's just basic organizational behavior. That's why companies and teams of people have their own corporate cultures. And I think we're going to continue to see that even more on the web.
I think, like you said, it's not just the web. It's the social norms with all of these online electronic tools are all in flux right now. Email, instant messaging, SMS, IRC, weblogs, comments, we're all still figuring it out. And to some extent, that's part of the whole experience is we're getting, every little group gets to define it in their own little way. You go into 10 different IRC channels, odds are, you know, you might see a few that are similar, but you're going to find very different social norms in different IRC channels. You go into Joito, and something called Jibot says, oh, hello, so-and-so, you know, I've never heard of you, or tell us something about yourself. And your first impression is, what's this, who's this Jibot person, and why are they asking me something? It's interesting because it just sets a different tone for the channel. And we aren't done figuring these things out. It's sort of in a hyper-evolutionary phase. Just like the way high school kids picked up pagers and cell phones and IM before sort of like the rest of the world. You know, there are different market segments, different demographics that are evolving faster than others. It's a wildly interesting thing to study if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
So maybe this is a good time to take questions. Chris?
I wanted to ask, it's sort of both relevant to Sal and also the question on the negative. There seems to be a little bit of rel namespace collision because because like Technorati is now talking about the support and not support in the RAL tag. The idea being that if you support the premise in a particular tag versus you are against the premise of a particular link, those are relevant to Technorati. They can use that information, for instance, to up the level of entries that are supported and lower the level of entries that are not. That's both with the negative comments that were on before, and it also has to do with the, is there a namespace version of the route?
Did everybody hear that? And another one we can toss in there is vote links too.
That's what he's talking about.
Oh, okay.
Right? The Technorati, vote for, vote against, vote abstain? Yeah.
Okay. That's your question.
Okay. So the point is that you're right, the rel attribute can be used for lots of different things. Probably before today, a lot of folks would have said, well, I've seen link rel equals style sheet a lot. And that's probably the most commonly used rel attribute that's like on the web today, saying, hey, here's this link to this other document that is a style sheet for this document. And that's really what that functionality is. The rel attribute isn't just about linking to documents or people. It's also, you can link to specific posts. You can, in your hyperlinks, people have been using rel equals bookmark to say, hey, guess what? This is a permalink in my blog. And now you can discover the permalinks and spider them and do all that simply using the XHTML. Vote links are like a next step on top of that. This was a problem that Kevin Marks wanted to try and solve, because if you link to something, you sort of raise its whoopee, its sort of ranking in Google, and you may be wanting to link to something but want to criticize it. And so this is a very simple proposal, again, sort of ridiculously simple. Start ridiculously simple and see where you go. Is to say, well, what happens if you just pick 3 values that are vote for, vote against, and vote abstain, and just let people link to either other posts or other sites and say, okay, I'm saying something positive about this, or I'm saying something negative about this, or I'm explicitly being neutral about this. And I think the Technorati guys are actually spidering this right now. We'll have to see what comes out of it. But there's a difference between hyperlink to a particular post, deep into the archives as a weblog, and hyperlinking to, say, a site that represents a person. So you can usually figure that out by the context.
So that doesn't quite answer for me. So some people are going to get it wrong. They're going to vote for a person, and then they're going to think they're using XFN. Is that going to cause some kind of collision problem?
We'll have to see. I mean, so far we haven't seen it. But like many other sort of ridiculously easy technologies, you're going to get people experimenting with it, and I would say it's more of a positive than a negative, because oftentimes the best uses of technologies are ones that creators never thought of. So we're not sure for the moment. We'll have to see how people mix and match these things. And
I want to vote against and be able to say, I know I met this person. How do I do that vote with those?
Space separated.
Yeah, you just do it.
So in the rel attribute, everything is space separated. So you can say friend space met space colleague, etc. And all those values apply. Right.
And by the way, what does rel mean? Anybody?
There's also reverse, etc. There's a few tags on this, but I think the key point here is that neither of these things were over-designed. Yes, there may be collisions in the future, and if you really thought about it, you end up designing something like RDF. Neither of these guys wanted to do that. So they designed something that probably won't have a collision. If there is
I'm not even saying
I'm taping it. Just like B-roll.
Sure, yeah. Feel free to
Can you talk to me?
You need a car guy? Yeah, where's 20 by 2? Yeah, it's pretty, that's like,
Howard Running?
it's pretty, it's west.
That's not hard. Is that hard?
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the century, the obstacles? Does that make a wide angle?